Ballerina Farms just pulled one of the oldest marketing tricks in the book in the online space, and y'all stepped right in it.
The Ballerina Farm story has the entire internet up in arms over the last week, and I want to talk about it because more articles and follow-up corrections have come out, and I have some opinions that may or may not be extremely controversial. Because I think that a lot of the public's reaction is a really good example of lack of media literacy, lack of the ability to dissect a piece analytically and read between the lines in context, and also a whole lot of projection. But I will say it does start a really good conversation about women being vulnerable to being taken advantage and by things like Mormonism or men. So I'm going to walk you through the whole thing, but first I want to say I don't necessarily agree with that previous creator. I don't know if Ballerina Farm was working with the news article. I think that might be a bit of a stretch, but she's definitely using the fame, obviously, to market their farm and products because that's how marketing works, yes. So if you're not familiar, a journalist went and did a piece about tradwives or traditional wife, the stay-at-home sort of lifestyle wife. And her subject that she chose for this piece was Hannah Neeleman, or a woman who goes by Ballerina Farm. And that woman has millions and millions of followers across platforms. And she wrote an article about Hannah Neeleman and her life, which is important to know, so I will summarize it for you. Hannah grew up in a large Mormon family. She was very good at ballet dancing, so she went to Juilliard to dance. And as a young girl, she always dreamed of being a professional dancer, obviously, so that's what she went on to do. But then she met David, who is the heir to the JetBlue fortune, so billionaire family. And he pursued her for quite some time, and she refused to go out with him until one day he booked a seat right next to her on a flight and convinced her to. After just a couple weeks of dating, they got engaged, and then they got married right away. And then, of course, they started having children quickly. She continued to dance, but after having a number of the children, she decided to stop dancing professionally. And the family moved to Utah to start this farmer kind of pioneer yeehaw Mormon lifestyle. Because again, remember, the whole time, they're both Mormons. This is what Mormons do. Now they are a billionaire family with just a crap ton of kids who live on this farm in Utah. And they're also social media stars. And I will say, yes, they kind of do probably create a pretty fake lifestyle about this being attainable because they're billionaires working on a farm who probably make a lot of their current money as well from social media and not the farm. Oh, and the whole time throughout all of this, she is a pageant girl. She's been doing pageants. She was even doing pageants while pregnant. She becomes very famous, right? She competes in Miss America, wins Miss American, Miss Utah, the whole 9 yards, but she is quickly dubbed kind of the queen of the trad wives. And that's the lifestyle she promotes on the internet with her Mormon husband who's always by her side. And so then we get to the article that was written that sparked all this controversy of people on the internet kind of infantilizing this grown woman and making her out to be someone who's being held captive, possibly in an abusive relationship or just unhappy with her life. And all that is sparked by the way this article is written, because right away, I found this article a little bit strange. And my first question is, did Hannah know that this was going to be the topic of the article, painting her as a helpless trad wife? Or did they just tell her it was going to be a piece about her life? Because as I was reading this article, it felt to me like this journalist went into the interview kind of with the article already written. It doesn't directly quote her a ton. It just seems like she went in to get quotes to then add to this article, which is a thing that does happen sometimes, but entirely lacks journalistic integrity. So this whole article kind of paints Hannah's husband out to be almost a villain and her to be very helpless. Which brings me to the podcast that I think a lot of people didn't listen to, where you actually get to hear Hannah herself talk about her life. Although the podcast is still done in a really weird way because it's an interviewer interviewing the interviewer about Hannah's life, and then occasionally they'll just include a few clips of Hannah speaking. But for the most part, the interviewer is answering the questions for Hannah. To which I again have to ask, why did you go and interview her and record the whole thing and then not make that the podcast? It feels like she was very clearly looking for just specific clips to back up her story. And in this podcast, which she left out of the original article in which she framed Hannah as a victim to her husband, Hannah clarifies that actually her husband's told her if she wants to continue to dance professionally, she totally can. And she was the one who made the decision to stop dancing. And then Hannah also mentions several times that she feels her and her husband are a partnership. Everything they do together. And that includes raising the kids and working the business on the farm. So she does clarify multiple times that she is very involved in a lot of things that happen, and she's not just like some housewife who's held hostage. And she makes it clear that yes, her dream as a child was to be a professional ballet dancer. And yes, she originally wanted the barn on their farm to be a ballet studio, but her dreams changed as she grew and evolved. And with the more kids they had, they needed that space to be a school for them. She's now come forward several times making very clear that yes, as you grow in age, your dreams in life do change. And because we are Mormon, like, family and religion has always been first and will always be first. Also in the article, she makes it clear that originally the natural home births were her idea, even though she did love the one time she went to the hospital and had an epidural. And comments like that raise a little bit more of a red flag for the public are the part I actually want to circle back to. Because the end of the podcast, the journalist lets it slip her a complete bias the entire time about how she is against tradwife lifestyles. Because it's so easy for women to enter these, right, and then lose all sense of like control in your life, and then you're trapped there, and it can quickly become something you didn't sign up for. And that is something I think really resonates with the public and has been causing them to project a lot onto the ballerina farms. And I think that would have resonated much more with readers and been a better angle for this journalist to take, whilst leaving the ballerina farms out of it, and find a different subject to focus on who actually was and escaped the Mormon religion, or something similar to that. That's the scariest and most common story that a lot of us women think about and fear, and has all this projection and uproar happening, trying to save this woman. There is a big danger in the tradwife lifestyle of marrying someone, right, and then maybe even having 1 or 2 kids, and then waking up one day and they're just not the person you signed up for. And there are so many stories that they could have used of women who have come forward and been yeah, my husband turned into someone who wasn't the man I married, and I didn't know what to do because I was just stuck at home with the kids now as he went out to work. In fact, they made an amazing TV series on Netflix called Maid that if you haven't seen it, it's literally about that, and it's moving and it's upsetting. And I do think that every at least man should watch that show to get some perspective of women's greatest fears. And obviously, I don't know. You don't know. No one can know for sure. Maybe she is being silenced. But if you read the articles that were released with the correct biases in place, and on top of that, the multiple responses that she herself has made at this point, it doesn't seem extremely likely that this story to me was exactly what it was made out to be in that article. However, she and her husband are now using the popularity to market their products, which is an understandable move.